Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Viral Manjan Season 2 with Subura Rizwani and myself, Zahra Marvi. Our topic for today is all about the travel industry, its challenges and benefits, and what are the key takeaways from this industry for your own businesses. For this particular topic, we have a brilliant guest speaker, Andre Pivetier. Very happy to have you with us, Andre.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, listeners, before we begin, let's get to know Andre a bit better. As CEO of Ascended, Andre is responsible for bringing innovative hospitality tech and consumer travel products to Pakistan and the growing economies of the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. Recognized by the HSMAI in 2015, Andre Pivetier is considered an expert in hospitality sales, marketing, and online distribution. He launched successful startup operations in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia for HotelRooms.com, conducted hundreds of hotel inspections in 40 countries for leading luxury hospitality brands, and worked with owners, investors, and hospitality groups on a number of high profile hotel and resort developments projects in Paris, London, Venice, Rome, Croatia, Singapore, Thailand, the Middle East, and Caribbean. Having taught postgraduate seminars on cultural tourism at the Sorbonne, Andre is concerned with sustainable tourism and its impact on rural development as it relates to economic growth and the development of the tourism sector in Pakistan. Wow, now that's quite a bio. So, we are very happy to have Andre with us today, and we have very important questions to ask him. So, let's begin the questioning. Subura, over to you.
Hi, listeners, and hi, Andre. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, today we're going to be asking a lot of interesting questions, and we have years of experience sitting with us in our podcast. So, let's just start the session. So, Andre, I'll just begin with a very common and general question that how has digital transformed marketing in the travel sector? For example, in terms of technology, applications, artificial intelligence, and overall.
Digital's changed everything. It's about 10 to 15, even a 20-year evolution. Just a case in point, yesterday I was with our client, PC Hotels, and also with a bank that they've got a partnership with. And they were talking about co-promotion for one of the Privilege Club cards, which is one of the PC Hotels membership cards. And the guys from the bank, who were in their 50s, said there's really no reason to put standees and physical promotions in the bank. He says your target market, they do everything online, they do everything mobile, and they don't even come to the branches anymore. So with that in mind, there's really a need to understand where your clients are, what your products are, and to adapt a sort of 360 campaign to it. Case in point, I made the drive down from Gilgit through the KKH, and along the way I saw all these hotels under construction, and I realized that Pakistan, there's still a large part of the community that uses highways and drives, and that road signs in certain parts of the world, road signs are an absolute waste. And in Pakistan, for certain products, specifically a budget hotel brand that we're launching at Ascendant, road signs are absolutely indispensable. So the answer to that question, it's a mix. AI apps, what AI is doing is it's separating the haves from the have-nots. What you've got are really the big five, the FANGs, the Facebooks, the Googles, the whatnot, the YouTube. I mean, it's absolutely crazy the precision with which they're able to decide what you're interested in and serve content that's really changing your brain. And particularly, there are all kinds of very political issues right now about teenagers that are essentially being over marketed to. And you've got people like Yuval Harari talking about artificial intelligence and choice, and how when you use Google Maps, you let Google Maps tell you how to get from point A to point B, and you don't feel like you've given up any sort of autonomy, but you have. Now, what happens when they start making choices about what you watch, what you read, who you befriend? So the next 20 years are going to be insane.
So we're being controlled by all the applications and artificial intelligence, in short.
Well, we've been controlled for thousands of years by family, friends, husbands, wives. Control and giving up control is nothing new.
Okay, so it's going to be the digital control now.
Exactly. It's giving it up to companies and corporations that maybe care a little less about it.
Yeah, interesting. So that's fine. We're all on board with the digital transformation and how it's been controlling everything. What do you think that are the hurdles faced by this industry particularly, locally and globally, and currently the hurdles being faced by the industry, and how can they be resolved?
2020, because of the situation, the unique situation we find ourselves in, has really, whether it's the stock market with certain digital stocks that are performing really well, and companies like Netflix because people are staying in more, people that are ordering food like Amazon and whatnot. Within the travel space, what this situation has done is, Pakistan has always been 96% domestic travel. So, I'm, as a foreigner, really keen for other people outside of Pakistan to discover the beauty and the unique plural, gems, the unique landscape, people, culture that Pakistan offers. If you look at 2017, 2018, 2019, there was some pretty considerable growth, but you're still at 1.3 to 1.9 million inbounds. Most of that business. You have a lot less leisure travel. You had William and Kate at the end of 2019. There was sort of a charm offensive. You had magazines like Condé Nast Traveler mentioning that Pakistan was the absolute destination for 2020. So the situation is such that, I think this will really dampen foreigners coming to Pakistan, because in the current zeitgeist, people are looking for safety, security. What you see in the United States, for example, hotels that are in big cities that are convention hotels are struggling for their lives. Hotels that are weekend break hotels in sort of, a 1 hour, 2 hour drive outside of the city where people can go and relax, they're thriving, they're full. People who've been on lockdown, and we see the same thing in Europe. We see a lot more in-country tourism. I'm based in France, and I come back and forth between France and Islamabad. The people that I know, the travel agents that I've worked with in the past, they're doing great business for things like wine tasting, food, things like that, domestically. So when people, investors ask me, what's the changing face of travel for Pakistan? I said, oddly enough, very little has changed. I mean, roads were jammed up to Naran in August, and that's the way it's always been. Nothing's changed. Hotels were 70%, 80% full instead of being fully booked. So, the hurdles that have been faced by the industry, I think there's this element of safety, but when I look around me and I see relaxed attitudes toward everything, I wonder if 2021 is really going to be all that different from 2019 for the average Pakistani and for the average Pakistani travel product. Whether it's a hotel, whether it's an excursion, whether it's a bus ticket. We partner with bookme.pk, that organize all the bus ticketing for the major lines, the Faisal Movers, the Daewoo's and whatnot. And, the month of August, they said, was right back where they were in January and February. So V-shaped recovery, as they say.
Okay, so it's more towards the recovery side of the things, or do you feel that it has increased the influx of travel in the northern areas? Because the concept of staycation is like, it's really growing within all, everybody, that, instead of going abroad, they're just going to northern areas and they're traveling within the country.
Staycation globally was one of these things that sort of like people innovated and nobody was really excited about. And this year, everybody got really excited about it because it was something different.
Yeah.
It broke the monotony. It broke the sort of the confinement, and it was exotic. So is the staycation here to stay? Absolutely. And I think that people get more creative about packaging them. I think there'll be more exciting staycation offerings. The numbers that I've seen for demand in the Northern Territories, August, slightly off August of last year, but within 20 to 30% of what's typical. So given the situation, I think everybody can be proud of that.
Sounds good. I think the travel and tourism industry is going to be back on track soon. I just want to ask one more question regarding what you're already working on in Pakistan, and that's sustainable tourism and its impact on rural development. If you would like to just share,
Absolutely, absolutely.
this.
Um, my background was 10, 12 years of online distribution for a company called hotelrooms.com. I opened the office in Europe, then in Dubai, and in Bangkok. And what I saw in online distribution, that a country like Indonesia, which was the fourth biggest country in the world, 2012, nothing was done online. By 2014, there were 7 different online travel agents, like their local versions of Booking.com, Expedia, Ctrip, Agoda. Brazil, the 5th biggest country in the world, I was there in 2014, is very much the same, very much like Pakistan even a couple of years ago. And in the 18 months that I've been here, if I look at some of the leaders, whether it's PC Hotels or Avari Towers, who I met with yesterday, they said they're doing 25, 30% of their business online, which is absolutely amazing, which means that Pakistan, obviously open to Daraz, to Kareem, Pakistanis are quite comfortable doing business online, and it's really about time that hotels make a substantial offering online. But to get to your original question about sustainable development, Pakistan is faced with a real unique issue in that there's high demand for the northern territories for 3 to 4 months a year, and it becomes really, really difficult to have a sustainable business model for a hotel developer. You spend millions of dollars to build a physical structure that can only operate 3 to 4 months out of the year because it's under the snow. So the only real viable offering is to come up with something that's very similar to Airbnb. And I think probably most of your listeners are familiar with what Airbnb is, even though it's not made a splash. It's this idea of private homestays. So we're looking at working with lending agents, banks, non-bank lending agents. And the idea is that you can lend anywhere between 50,000 and 150,000 rupees to a private home in an area that's got maybe a simple family, that maybe doesn't have a spring mattress, that maybe doesn't have a clean washroom. And what we're doing is we're investing in these areas where there aren't enough rooms for the Pakistanis that are traveling to these areas. And we did some math actually, and if you were to take a 125,000 rupee loan, about $750, if you're charging $100 a night, 15,000 rupees, 16,000 rupees, which is actually a lot less expensive than a lot of the sort of average to lower average hotels in the northern areas. Even if you rented that room 60% of the time, 60% of the sort of a target occupancy rate in the hotel industry, you're making $7,000 a year for a family in the northern areas. If you do that 1,000 times, you're making $7.2 million in that area. In rural development and in sustainable development for hotels, the minute that you have a traveler coming to an area, he or she's going to spend money on food. There needs to be a taxi network that doesn't exist yet. There are excursions that are around that. So, even if you were to take just 1,000 families receiving a microloan of 125,000 rupees, those 1,000 families can potentially generate $36 million over 5 years. The numbers are insane. So this is something that I'm quite interested in because I've seen this work in other places. And Pakistan has a unique sort of, we say the stars are aligned. Everyone loves the northern territories, and there's lesser competition. In other markets, if this was a beach in a sort of a beach area in India or in Mauritius or something like that, you'd have hotels that would compete for it because it'd be an 8-month or a 10-month season. But because the season is so short here, and because the microlending amount is so minimal, we've got the booking platform where we treat those individual homestays the same way we treat a hotel. So that room that belongs to an individual in Naran or 10 minutes outside of Naran, that room can be booked via booking.com. It can be booked via bookme.pk, which is one of our local partners. It can be booked via any bank. We're going to be partnering with JazzCash, EasyStay, EasyPesa. So all of the different hotels that you could book anywhere, you can also book private homestays. So this gets at the heart of your question about rural development.
This is brilliant. Actually, it means that we're mobilizing a lot of people and we're creating a lot of employment opportunities in those areas.
Correct.
So, how long do you think that this is going to take to develop, or actually, it will be, uh, we'll start seeing the results?
We're hopeful that we'll take care of the lending before the end of this calendar year. That gives us 3 to 6 months next year to do the tenant improvements, so that at least half of these, maybe 300 to 500 rooms, will be ready by next summer.
And we're just focusing on the northern areas at the moment. So you're not focusing towards on the beach side, like the Balochistan belt, where we have really beautiful beaches.
I was asked to speak at the Disrupt conference in November, and I got up on stage and I made waves by saying that Airbnb would never work in Pakistan. And there have been 2 or 3 different Airbnb clone attempts locally here that have sort of come and gone. And the reason why it worked in the United States is that San Francisco and New York City, the hotels sell out 40 weeks a year because of conferences. So if you're going to the city, whether you're part of the conference or not part of the conference, you have a $150 hotel room that's for sale for $350 simply because demand is very, very high. The product itself isn't worth the price. So when you're heavily supply constrained and the price exceeds the value of the product you're paying for, it's ripe for disruption. So the Northern Territories are exactly like San Francisco or New York City, those 40 weeks a year, but in our world, it's exactly supply constrained for July and August. So we look to replicate, and we believe that we can fill those because there's so many people that go up there that camp, that don't want to camp because they have to camp and they would love a hot shower.
Again, similar is not the case with other, in the other parts of the country. So all the focus is
once we prove the business case, and Pakistanis who need a room in the Northern Territories, they will then look to our platform, the Roomf platform, for those clean, consistent rooms, and then we'll introduce that in Quetta and in the beaches in the south as well. Absolutely, that's part of the plan.
That's great.
The following year.
The following year.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it, and we're excited for that. Moving forward with the discussion, now we'll just like you to, just give some advice to the entrepreneurs who are in the travel industry, and what are those, maybe some strategic steps or some tips that you can give out to them, because nowadays we see a lot of travel groups, and for example Adventure PK, and there's so many groups who take people to northern areas, and they're arranging all these tours. So the trends that we can bring in from abroad, and these successful models you're already working on a few. So but just for our listeners, so they can also apply those strategies and those tips for their businesses.
I've been really fortunate. For the last 15 years, I've been able to sort of get behind my ideas, and I've persuaded other people to get behind them. And I've sort of, there are a couple ways to do it. You either go into a company in Pakistan, it'd be a job at Jazz or at Engro, where you've got structure and you've got a linear career path and you're doing things for other people. The flip side of that is a sort of the entrepreneurial path. And there's no shame in being a small business owner. I think the biggest mistake that I see repeated over and over and over again is people sort of fall under the spell of this high growth success story, whether it's Zuckerberg, there are a handful of people that everybody sort of knows about. And it's like, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire, a billionaire, a gazillionaire. And you sort of get so trapped by this notion of success that you kind of forget about what you're doing. And I think that the world needs a lot more people committed and passionate to an idea that is a well-defined idea that's small. One of my favorite local startups is Find My Adventure. I've met Kumail a couple of times, and they love what they're doing, and they're organizing excursions. And Pakistan is a rich country in terms of natural resources. They're sharing it with Pakistanis over the last couple of months. When I've spoken to them, they're trying more and more to make it accessible to foreigners. And I think what they're doing right is they're singularly focused on a goal, and rather than get caught up on the big prize, They're really looking to deliver. And one of the things they did that I thought was really admirable was, the Northern Territories, the other 7 or 8 months when those Northern Territories are closed or inaccessible, they're looking at corporate promotions and corporate sort of events and whatnot. And, finally, an excursion or an adventure is, and that was the advice I gave them. We were talking about how they could grow and whether they would grow into travel. And I said, if you're going to compete with car service companies, there are other people that do that better. If you can compete with hotels, then you're going to be competing with me. And I said, in your position, what I would do is I would focus on, the 17 or 16, 15-year-old young woman who wants to have baking adventures with other friends. And that's a little bit, reductionist and sexist. Maybe it's the young man who wants to bake.
Yeah, but let's focus on baking.
But the thing is maybe it's a shooting range or something like that. So the idea is to really be...
Shooting range is interesting.
The idea is to be committed to what you're doing more so than the act of being a successful entrepreneur. That's my advice.
Thank you. I think all our listeners should, just take this advice. And it's pretty interesting to know that how people are growing in Pakistan within the travel industry. So apart from the travel industry, there are other industries too. So being an expert in marketing, sales, and online distribution, is there any advice that you'd like to give to people other than the travel industry? Keeping in view the current, because everybody says that, challenging times and tough times, but I see that, there are a lot of growth opportunities. So anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, they're challenging times in some industries and other industries are thriving. I think resiliency, the human capacity for resilience is really what defines us. And, somebody who's young should always be interviewing. I've spoken to my own team and they think I'm insane. I said, you can sit back and wait for your increment every year, or you can always be needed on the market. And don't try to align the salary you're getting with your contribution. It's like, oh, I'm getting the salary I deserve, so I'm going to give 110%, or I'm underpaid, so I'm only going to give 75%. Accept every challenge, make yourself irreplaceable everywhere, including with other possible employers. And then when you get that other job offer, go to your boss and say, I'm committed to this project, but I have this other opportunity. It gives you leverage. Always be hustling. That's my advice.
So you think people can be irreplaceable?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a good point, and I'm also going to know this now. Thank you so much, Andre, for for a really nice discussion. I think we've learned a lot about the travel industry, and I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy this too. Over to you, Zara.
Wow. As a silent member in this conversation, I learned so much today. Thank you so much for joining us, Andre. It was quite an insightful session with you. I had a lot of fun. The one thing that I have taken away from businesses, travel or otherwise, is adaptability, especially in terms of digital. Making your business more focused on digital, especially not shying away from entrepreneurial ventures, is the way to go now. So, listeners, if you have any questions for us, let us know. And also stay tuned for our next episode. See you guys next time.